Most people still grow up believing that earning six figures is the finish line, a sign that you've escaped financial stress and finally stepped into the world of comfort. But think about this for a second. Why do so many Americans hitting that milestone today still feel like they're running on a treadmill that never stops? You probably noticed it too. The moment someone hears, I make 100,000 a year, they assume life must be easy, yet behind closed doors, most of those earners quietly admit that the money disappears faster than they ever imagined. And here's the punchline most people overlook. The dollar didn't just lose value. The entire definition of making it shifted under our feet. 100,000 used to feel like a cushion. Now it feels like thin ice. Another punchline. Earning more today doesn't guarantee freedom. Sometimes it just upgrades the stress. Everything we see on the surface is only the beginning, because the real problem Americans face today goes much deeper, and that deeper truth begins in the next section. The hidden squeeze on everyday Americans. For millions of Americans, the financial pressure they feel today isn't imagined. It's built into the economic environment they're trying to survive in. Inflation has eaten away at every corner of daily life, from the price of milk to the cost of breathing in a major city. Wages didn't rise to match it, yet groceries quietly climbed 30 to 40%. Gas swings like a mood light switch, and housing turned into a luxury item even for people with stable careers. Think about this for a second. Someone earning six figures today often brings home roughly what a solid middle-class worker brought home 20 years ago, except now everything they need to stay afloat costs twice as much. It's not laziness, it's arithmetic. When a modest one-bedroom rents for $2,000 a month and childcare can rival a mortgage, a high salary becomes just another number swallowed by the system. And here's the punchline most people miss. The paycheck increased, but the lifestyle it can support collapsed. Another punchline. The average American isn't mismanaging money. They're managing shrinking purchasing power in a world that keeps raising the price of stability. The emotional strain that comes with this is real because it triggers a constant sense of falling behind, even when you're doing everything right. You've probably felt this too, that quiet frustration when your income grows but your breathing room doesn't. And instead of celebrating progress, you end up wondering where the money went. Everyday life is now structured around fixed expenses that can consume 70% of a person's take-home pay, leaving less room for resilience, savings, or even a moment to relax. And for many, the pressure isn't just financial, it's psychological, because the modern economy rewards effort slower than it punishes mistakes. Americans are navigating rising healthcare premiums, unpredictable insurance rates, student loan payments that feel endless, and grocery prices that make people double-check the register as if there must be an error. Think about this. Even people with strong incomes often postpone milestones like buying a home or having children because they fear the long-term costs more than the responsibility itself. And this leads to another punchline. The system trains people to survive instead of thrive, turning stability into an aspiration instead of a norm. Yet all of this is still just the surface. The deeper shift happening across America, the one that explains why earning more rarely feels like winning, begins in the next section. The core truth most people never see. Most people think financial pressure comes from one simple cause, not earning enough. But the real story is far more complicated, and it begins with understanding how money behaves in a system where costs rise faster than income. Think about this for a second. A six-figure salary used to be a symbol of freedom, because the basic pillars of life were affordable enough that a single income could support a home, a car, a family, and a future. Today, those same pillars sit on unstable ground. Housing is 8 times the average income in many states. Childcare can cost more than college tuition, and groceries can feel like a monthly math test you never studied for. The first punchline is this: earning more doesn't automatically buy security anymore, because the economic game people are playing today has different rules than the one their parents played. The second punchline is even harder to swallow. The pressure people feel isn't a sign of personal failure, it's a sign that the system quietly changed the definition of enough without telling anyone. And here's where the three most important forces shaping modern financial stress collide into one insight. The first force is the shrinking power of the dollar. When inflation compounds year after year, the real value of your paycheck gets chipped away like a block of ice melting on a hot sidewalk. People notice the big price jumps, like rent or used cars, but they rarely see the hundreds of micro-inflations quietly draining them each month. Things like service fees, surcharges, smaller packaging for the same price, or medical deductibles creeping upward over time. These small cuts add up to something enormous. What feels like a spending problem is often a purchasing power problem. And here's another punchline: Americans aren't bad with money. They're trying to make yesterday's income survive in today's economy. The second force is lifestyle expansion, a psychological trap that hits almost everyone earning more than they used to. When your income grows, your brain upgrades your expectations without asking permission. You move to a better neighborhood, subscribe to more conveniences, buy fresher groceries, take a nicer vacation, and suddenly your life becomes 15% more comfortable and 200% more expensive. Caution the cue, you've probably felt this too, that moment when you rationalize an upgrade because you work hard or you deserve it. None of those choices are wrong on their own, but the accumulation can quietly reshape a person's entire financial life. The punchline here is simple. Lifestyle growth is almost invisible, but once it's in place, it becomes incredibly hard to reverse. Another punchline: when people level up their spending faster than they level up their saving, the income increase becomes an illusion of progress. The third force is what financial psychologists call structural insecurity. The persistent fear that even strong incomes can collapse with one unexpected change. In today's economy, losing a job, taking a health hit, having a child, or facing a surprise repair can cost thousands. And because so many Americans were never taught how to build buffers, they end up living one event away from financial turbulence. This insecurity creates a mental loop of second guessing, even for high earners. Think about it. You can make 2 or 3 times the national median income and still feel uncertain because so much of your financial life sits on fixed, non-negotiable costs. That uncertainty is not weakness. It's a rational response to a system built on volatility. And here's a punchline most people never consider. Stability is expensive in America, and the price of peace of mind rises faster than most salaries. Another punchline: the wealthy don't feel secure because they have more money. They feel secure because they control how their money behaves, something most earners never get the chance to learn. All three forces combine into one core truth. Earning more doesn't automatically change your financial destiny unless your behavior and long-term vision change with it. Many people assume that once they cross a certain income threshold, they can coast. But the reality is that your financial habits matter far more than your paycheck. People earning $60,000 0 cents can end up wealthier than people earning $160,000 0 cents if their decisions compound in the right direction. Think about that for a moment. Money doesn't respond to volume. It responds to consistency and direction. The punchline is that the people who win financially aren't the ones who earn the most. They're the ones who waste the least and plan the best. And another punchline: freedom isn't a number, it's a system you build for yourself. People often underestimate how much emotional weight money carries. A high earner who feels lost financially suffers more stress than a middle earner who feels in control. That's why so many six-figure earners describe themselves as anxious even when their bank accounts look good on paper. They haven't built clarity around what their money is supposed to accomplish, so every financial choice feels uncertain. Without a defined target, every expense feels like a mistake and every big decision feels like a risk. That uncertainty drains energy and steals confidence, making people feel like they're failing even when they're objectively doing well. This leads to a final punchline for this section: people don't need more income, they need more clarity. Another punchline: most financial problems are planning problems disguised as income problems. Everything said so far might feel heavy, but This is just the foundation. The real transformation begins when we see how these forces affect real people living real lives in today's economy, and that deeper understanding starts in the next section. The American story we all recognize. Let me tell you a story that reflects what millions of Americans are quietly living through. A story that isn't dramatic or extreme, but painfully ordinary. Meet Daniel and Marisa, a couple in their mid-30s living in a mid-sized U.S. city, both earning solid incomes, both responsible, both the type of people everyone around them assumes are doing great. They make a combined $145,000 0 cents a year, far above the national median. They don't live extravagantly, they don't splurge on designer clothes, and they don't chase status symbols. They do everything you're supposed to do, and yet every month ends the same way. They feel like they're treading water in a rising tide. Think about this for a second. How can two hardworking adults with good salaries still feel so financially fragile? It's because their story reveals the deeper truth about the modern American middle class. The first punchline: the struggle isn't about bad decisions, it's about a system that pushes even responsible people into a constant cycle of pressure. The second punchline: you can follow every rule and still feel behind. And that's exactly where their story begins. Daniel grew up believing that a stable life came from doing what his parents did: get an education, get a job, buy a house, save steadily. But the world he inherited didn't work like the world they lived in. When he and Marisa got engaged, they started looking for homes in the same neighborhood he grew up in. But within weeks, they realized that dream was gone. Houses that cost $180,000 0 cents in his childhood were now selling for $525,000 0 cents, and every open house looked like a competitive sport. They ended up buying a smaller house farther away from everything, and even then, the mortgage felt heavier than they expected. Every payment was manageable, but every payment also reminded them of how tight the margins had become. This is where the weight of modern living begins to show. Even when you can afford the basics consume so much of your income that the sense of progress becomes faint. And here's another punchline: owning a home doesn't make people feel secure anymore, it often makes them feel leveraged. Another punchline: the American dream didn't die, it just got more expensive than most people can comfortably carry. Marisa's job pays well, but her health insurance premiums rose 3 times in 5 years, and each increase felt like a silent tax on their progress. They don't have children yet, but every time they talk about it, they hit the same emotional wall. The fear of the unknown cost of raising a family. Diapers, childcare, school, after-school activities, healthcare, unexpected emergencies, all of it feels like a staircase that gets steeper with every step. They are not avoiding kids because they don't want them. They're delaying because the numbers don't feel safe. You've probably felt this too, that quiet anxiety about how many decisions in adulthood come down to, can we afford it, even when you're making more than your parents did? And here's a punchline most people ignore. Financial stress today isn't just about money, it's about the future feeling unpredictable. Another punchline: when the cost of living rises faster than the cost of dreaming, people stop dreaming. Despite all of this, Daniel and Marisa still try to invest. They put money into retirement accounts, but the progress feels slow. One year, the market grows, the next year it dips, and the emotional roller coaster makes them question whether they're doing the right thing. They scroll through social media and see people talking about passive income, real estate empires, crypto wins, early retirement, and suddenly their steady progress feels small. They don't want extreme strategies. They don't want to gamble. They just want to feel like they're not falling behind. And this is where the psychological battle begins. The first punchline: the more options people have, the more lost they often feel. The second punchline: most people don't need a more aggressive investment plan. They need a more confident one. One night, while reviewing their budget, Daniel realized something that hit him hard. They weren't struggling because they were irresponsible. They were struggling because so much of their financial life was predetermined. Mortgage, insurance, groceries, utilities, transportation, healthcare, these non-negotiables, consumed the majority of their income before they even had the chance to decide what to do with the rest. This is the part of modern life no one teaches you. Stability has become a subscription service with ever-increasing fees. And here's a punchline. When most of your money is spoken for before you even earn it, you never get the feeling of progress, no matter how hard you work. Another punchline, people don't feel broke because they lack income. They feel broke because they lack flexibility. Over time, Daniel started noticing something else. Whenever he got a raise, it didn't translate into more freedom, it translated into more expectations. Better clothes for work, better furniture for the home, better gifts for holidays, better vacations because we deserve it, better everything. And each upgrade made them feel good for a moment, but then it blended into normal life and the pressure returned. This is lifestyle expansion in real time, creeping slowly and silently through well-meaning choices. And you've probably experienced this too, that sense that life gets more comfortable but also more expensive in a way that feels irreversible. The punchline here is simple. If lifestyle grows at the same speed as income, your wealth never catches up. Another punchline, the real enemy of wealth isn't spending, it's unintentional spending. But here's the part of their story that matters most. One evening, after months of frustration, they sat down and asked a question too many Americans avoid. Where is this path actually taking us? Not emotionally, not hypothetically, but mathematically. They projected what their savings would look like in 10 years, what their mortgage would look like when it renews, what their retirement accounts might grow into, what inflation would do to their purchasing power. And for the first time ever, they felt a sense of clarity, and that clarity unlocked something powerful. The first punchline, people don't fear money, they fear not knowing what their money is doing. The second punchline, certainty is not created by income, it's created by understanding. Their story isn't about being rich or poor, it's about navigating a world where the middle class is being asked to do more with less. It's about the emotional weight of trying your best in a system that moves faster than your salary. It's about the quiet fear of falling behind even when you're doing everything right. Their story is the story of millions. And the lessons hidden inside it are what we explore next. Because everything they learned, everything they struggled through, everything they discovered about money and themselves becomes the foundation for the principles that can help anyone break free from the $100 0 cents K illusion, and those principles begin in the next section. The principles that actually create freedom today. There comes a point in every financial journey where income alone stops being the deciding factor, and behavior, mindset, and structure take over. That's the part most people overlook. And yet it's the exact place where long-term stability is either built or destroyed. Think about this for a second. Two people can earn the same income for 20 straight years and end up in completely different realities, not because one had better luck, but because one used principles that multiplied their choices while the other followed habits that silently reduced them. The punchline is this: financial freedom is built from consistent habits long before it's built from high income. Another punchline: money doesn't care how much you make, it cares how intentionally you use it. With that in mind, here are the principles that matter most in the world we live in today. The ones that help people escape the $100 0 cents K illusion and replace uncertainty with direction. The first principle is brutal in its simplicity. Treat rising income like a tool, not a lifestyle upgrade. Most people don't fail because they spend recklessly. They fail because their spending quietly expands at the exact same speed as their paycheck. You've probably felt this too, that urge to reward yourself, to loosen the belt a little, to finally enjoy the results of hard work. There's nothing wrong with comfort, but comfort becomes a trap when it grows faster than your savings. Think of your income like a staircase, and think of lifestyle as the railing. If the railing rises as quickly as the steps, you never climb higher. The punchline here is that growth without discipline creates the illusion of progress instead of real progress. Another punchline: lifestyle expansion is the stealth tax that steals more wealth than inflation ever could. When people freeze their lifestyle for a period of time and let income increase without immediately upgrading everything, the gap created becomes one of the most powerful engines of wealth. It's not glamorous, but it's real. The second principle is clarity over complexity. Most Americans don't suffer from a lack of effort. They suffer from a lack of financial visibility. When you don't know exactly where your money goes or what your long-term path looks like, fear fills in the blanks. And fear is expensive. Having clarity doesn't mean budgeting every penny. It means knowing your essential costs, knowing your future obligations, knowing your goal numbers, and knowing what your current habits will realistically turn into 10 or 20 years down the road. Think about this. The moment Daniel and Marisa mapped out their financial trajectory, the anxiety that had shadowed them for years suddenly started to dissolve, not because they were instantly richer, but because they finally understood the direction of their money. The punchline here is that people don't need control over everything. They just need clarity over the things that matter. Another punchline: confusion is one of the most expensive financial habits in the United States. The third principle is to build buffers before building ambition. Too many people chase investing strategies, leverage, or side hustles before they build the foundation that keeps them stable during the unexpected. The truth is simple: volatility punishes the unprepared. A job loss, a medical bill, a sudden repair, a family emergency. These aren't rare events, they're normal parts of life. But without buffers, those moments feel catastrophic. When you build a financial cushion, you're not just protecting your bank account, you're protecting your confidence. And confidence is what allows you to make smart decisions instead of rushed ones. You've probably experienced this too. When money is tight, even small problems feel massive. But when you have breathing room, you make decisions based on vision rather than panic. The punchline is that buffers buy you time, and time is the most valuable financial advantage anyone can have. Another punchline: wealth is not just measured in dollars, it's measured in how long you can stay calm when life gets loud. The fourth principle is understanding your personal risk tolerance, not the internet's. One of the biggest traps today is comparing your strategy to people who live different lives, earn different incomes, and carry different responsibilities. Some people chase aggressive strategies because they see others posting wins, but they don't see the sleepless nights or the stomach-dropping losses. Other people avoid investing altogether because they fear volatility, not realizing that inflation will quietly erode their money even faster. Financial success depends on knowing yourself, your stress levels, your goals, and your timeline. This is where the emotional side of money becomes unavoidable. If you invest in a way that constantly terrifies you, you won't stay consistent. If you invest in a way that is too cautious, your long-term goals might outrun your returns. The punchline is that the best strategy isn't the most exciting one. It's the one you can actually follow for decades. Another punchline: consistency beats intensity in every era of financial history. The fifth principle is directing your money toward creation instead of consumption. This doesn't mean avoiding fun or living frugally forever. It means choosing where your dollars go based on what they will produce over time. Money spent on image fades quickly. Money spent on tools, skills, assets, or opportunities compounds. When people use their income to buy things that generate options instead of bills, they slowly shift from survival mode to leverage mode. Think about this for a second. The wealthy don't become wealthy because they work harder. They become wealthy because they train their money to work even when they're not working, and that starts long before anyone feels rich. The punchline is that every dollar you earn has a job, and if you don't assign it one, the world will assign it for you. Another punchline: financial power doesn't start with high income. It starts with intentional direction. The sixth principle is emotional control, one of the most underrated financial skills in modern America. The market rises and people get greedy. The market falls and people get scared. Prices jump and people panic buy. Prices drop and people freeze. Emotional money decisions are almost always expensive decisions. People lose more wealth from reacting impulsively than from bad luck. When you train yourself to pause, to breathe, to wait before you spend or shift strategies, you save yourself from countless self-inflicted losses. And the truth is, emotional control isn't about being cold or detached. It's about having a stable framework that guides you no matter how loud the world becomes. The punchline is that impatience is one of the most costly traits in personal finance. Another punchline: calm is a form of compound interest. The seventh principle is arguably the most important. Define your version of enough. Without this, no amount of income, no amount of growth, no amount of success will ever feel satisfying. This is the trap many high earners fall into. They chase numbers that keep rising, goals that keep shifting, lifestyles that keep expanding. But if you never decide what your end game looks like, you will always feel behind, no matter how much you accomplish. Think about it. You cannot win a race if the finish line keeps moving. Yet millions of Americans live exactly like this, pushing harder each year while feeling emptier. The punchline is simple. Defining enough creates peace, and peace is what turns money from a source of anxiety into a source of freedom. Another punchline: you don't rise by earning more, you rise by needing less. These principles aren't complicated, but they're powerful when applied with intention. And the truth is, most people don't need to overhaul their entire life. They just need to adjust their direction by a few degrees, and over time, those small degrees create massive change. Everything you just read sets the stage for the deeper emotional shift that truly transforms a person's relationship with money, and that shift begins in the next section. The mindset shift that changes everything. There's a moment in everyone's financial life when the numbers stop being the main story, and the meaning behind those numbers starts to matter more. It often happens quietly, in the middle of a stressful month, or during a late-night budget review, or while watching someone else's life unfold and wondering why your own path feels heavier than it should. Think about this for a second. Money is supposed to be a tool, yet for most people it becomes a mirror reflecting their fears, their hopes, their insecurities, and their identity. And this is where the deepest shift needs to happen, not in income, not in strategy, but in philosophy. The first punchline is this: financial peace doesn't come from having more, it comes from understanding why you want more in the first place. The second punchline: money becomes powerful only when it stops being emotional fuel and starts being a structural foundation. Most Americans live in a constant push and pull between two beliefs: the belief that money will solve every problem and the belief that money isn't supposed to matter. Both extremes create stress because neither is true. Money won't fix your relationships, your confidence, or your sense of meaning, but lacking money will magnify every insecurity you already carry. That's why so many people chase bigger numbers without ever understanding the fear behind the chase. You've probably felt this too, that tension between wanting security and wanting freedom, wanting comfort and wanting growth, wanting to enjoy life and wanting to prepare for the future. The world trains people to think about money emotionally, but almost no one teaches them to think about money philosophically. And that's the shift that separates people who feel constantly behind from people who feel grounded, regardless of their income. One of the most important parts of this shift is understanding that wealth is not built in leaps, it's built in layers. Emotional layers, behavioral layers, structural layers. It's not about hitting one big milestone. It's about building a system that keeps supporting you even when life gets unpredictable. Think about this: the people who feel calm around money aren't the ones who earn the most. They're the ones whose systems absorb shocks. They can lose a job, face an emergency, or navigate a difficult season without spiraling because their financial life is built on resilience rather than hope. The punchline is that resilience is a form of wealth. Another punchline: if your money depends on everything going right, you don't have a plan, you have a gamble. Another part of this mindset shift is redefining what progress actually looks like. In a world obsessed with instant results, slow progress feels like failure. People see overnight success stories, viral entrepreneurs, booming market gains, and they begin to believe that if they're not accelerating, they're falling behind. But the truth is very different. Real financial growth is slow, steady, invisible in the moment, and undeniable over time. A single year won't change your life, but 10 years of consistent behavior will. You won't feel the shift every month, but one day you'll look back and realize you crossed an entire financial universe simply by staying steady. The punchline is that slow success is the most durable kind of success. Another punchline: consistency isn't glamorous, but it's undefeated. This shift also requires people to stop measuring their financial life by comparison. Comparison is one of the most destructive forces in modern finance because it keeps everyone chasing someone else's finish line. Social media has made this even worse, turning wealth into a highlight reel and struggle into something that people hide. Think about this. You can be financially strong on paper and still feel behind simply because you're comparing yourself to someone who started earlier, has different responsibilities, or is playing a completely different game. You've probably experienced this too, that sinking feeling when someone your age buys a home, has a child, takes a big vacation, or seems to jump forward in life while you're still catching your breath. But comparison is a distortion. It steals joy, hides progress, and creates pressure that has nothing to do with reality. The punchline is simple: your financial life is not a race, it's a personal path. Another punchline: the moment you stop comparing, you start winning. Finally, this mindset shift requires redefining the purpose of money altogether. Most people think money is about accumulating more, but money's true purpose is to give you control over your time, your energy, and your choices. Freedom doesn't come from the size of your bank account. It comes from aligning your spending with your values, your saving with your goals, and your investing with your future. When you see money as a tool for living intentionally rather than a scoreboard for proving something, the anxiety begins to dissolve. Suddenly, you don't feel behind, you feel directed. You don't feel stressed, you feel equipped. You don't feel lost, you feel anchored. And that anchoring is the foundation of real financial peace. The punchline is that wealth isn't about having everything, it's about having enough for the life you actually want. Another punchline: the richest people aren't the ones with the most money, they're the ones with the most alignment. All of this leads to one powerful realization: money doesn't get easier, you get stronger. Your mindset becomes clearer, your decisions become calmer, your future becomes more intentional, and your entire financial life begins to shift from reaction to direction. Everything ahead becomes easier to navigate once this foundation is in place, and the final step of this journey brings everything together in one simple, grounded message, which begins in the next section: the simple shift that starts your new path. If there's one thing this entire journey reveals, it's that you don't need to overhaul your life to feel financially stronger. You just need to take the next intentional step. Think about this for a second. Every breakthrough begins with a decision, not a dollar amount. And the moment you choose direction over drift, your entire financial path starts to shift. The punchline is this: you don't escape the $100 0 K illusion by earning more. You escape it by thinking differently. Another punchline: the smallest consistent action always beats the biggest inconsistent plan. If you're committed to leveling up your finances this year, comment "I'm leveling up," because your next chapter starts the moment you decide to write it.